Hey everybody, Mark here with North of the Wall Garage. Today I wanted to cover the 4 biggest cons to the new GX550. Owned the truck for about 2 weeks now and have discovered some interesting things. So probably the biggest con that we've discovered so far with the GX550 will only apply to some of you who have children or especially a car seat in the car. I guess really only just a car seat in the car, right? Doesn't matter. If your kids are older, this wouldn't really apply. But as you open the rear door, obviously this door is not going to open a full 90 degrees. That's okay. But what ends up happening is, and now ever since I washed the car and got the tire shine off, this is a little bit less of an issue. But what ends up happening is as you go to load your child into the car, your leg ends up making contact with the tire. So what that means is you get your kid in the car, they're freaking out, you get them strapped, and then you have a tire print on your leg. So that was kind of unexpected. Now, granted, like I said, when we initially got the car, the tires were all shined up. It looked beautiful, but that's really what was coming off on our clothes. Now that the car, I've washed it a couple times, there's no more tire shine on the vehicle. That issue doesn't happen anymore. And the other thing is too, you can be cognizant of that connection between your leg and the tires. So when I go to load my son in now, I'm a little more aware of where my leg's lining up relative to that tire, and I'm not totally putting my weight on that side of the car such that my clothes make contact with the tire. Just like more, I guess, conscious of my body position as I get him loaded up. It sounds annoying, and I guess it sort of is to be thinking about that type of stuff when you're just focused on getting your kid in the car. That was not an issue with us with the GX460. We had the GX460 and loaded him in, without running into anything like that. I think that was just the position of the tire versus the door, and the tires were smaller on that thing anyways. So that is, I think, one thing we were totally unprepared for and noticed the first couple times getting him into the truck. Another con that we've discovered in the new Lexus GX550 is relating to the climate controls. So it was well publicized that in the Overtrail models, you do not get the rear climate. You don't get it in the ceiling vents like you do in the premium and luxury models. And then you don't get separate climate control on the console. There are heated seats and vents back there, but they're not separate climate control. That's fine. What I find especially interesting here, and what is more of, I think, on the con side just versus other vehicles that I've owned, and maybe it's just more of the case that the temperature readings for the interior are actually very accurate, is that typically when I set my BMW or my Mercedes or really any other car that I've ever owned, when I set it to 70 degrees in the interior, it would make it quite cold actually. The AC would really blow pretty hard. And now we're having ambient temperatures of 70 degrees, 75 degrees, almost 80 degrees outside. When I leave this thing outside and it gets a little warm, you'd expect this to blow really hard, and as a result get a lot of air to the back passengers as well. Unfortunately, that just really hasn't happened with this car. If I really want it to blow hard, for one, I have to jack the temperature real low, into the 60s. And then I'll also sometimes take it off auto and manipulate the fan just to send a little more air back there. So a little bit inconvenient when you have to deal with the rear passengers asking to put the air up. And by rear passengers, I just mean my wife when she's sitting back there with my son. But something to note, I guess, is that it just behaves a little more differently than other cars I've had in the past. That doesn't mean that it's like, I guess necessarily a huge con, but it's something that I've had to sort of adapt to. Is I keep this number way lower than I do in other vehicles, just because it doesn't really blow hard unless you've got it quite low. So now for the third, and I think the biggest con, the thing that I wish could be changed the most. And I'll say I do think this could be changed with an aftermarket fix eventually, but as some of you may know, the GX550 will be coming out as a hybrid in future years, and in other markets like Asia, I think there's even like prototypes, the hybrid prototypes, the GX550H rolling around. Part of that is that when you get to the fuel tank size, and this is the con, the fuel tank, I think, may have been made smaller. For one, this is ever so slightly more efficient than the GX460. And two, they have to make room for the battery in the back for the hybrid model. So potentially the fuel tank size was reduced in order to make room for that hybrid powertrain. Now, what's my issue with this? Well, the GX460 held, I think, 22 or 24 gallons. I can fact check that and put it in the description. But effectively, fuel tank size for an internal combustion vehicle is a function of range. So when we talk about EVs nowadays, all anyone cares about is range, really, right? Range. That's the whole conversation. That's all that really matters. So why, for an internal combustion car, would you make a compromise on range? That's one of the huge advantages to internal combustion. Obviously, yes, you can get, fully fueled much quicker than an EV, and that's a huge advantage, and that's probably the biggest advantage to internal combustion. But the second piece needs to be range. So I would think for a big truck, like a 400-mile highway range would be probably standard, or you'd at least want to see that. And with the 18 to 20 gallon tank that's in here, you're just really not getting that range. I think, to me, and I haven't had this on a full highway trip yet, we will be doing one shortly in a month. But to me, this full range, the highway range, is around like 280, 300 miles, and that's just not enough. So in the future, when there's an auxiliary or larger fuel tank available in the aftermarket, those existed even for the GX460, you get like a 30-gallon fuel tank. I will absolutely be upgrading this. I just think range is a really important function of internal combustion, one of the huge advantages, and that really needs to be corrected on this vehicle. And not to compare the two vehicles, and again, I've mentioned in other videos, my Mercedes is on loan this summer, but my diesel Mercedes, which is an E-Class sedan, has a 20-gallon fuel tank, and it gets incredible fuel mileage. So that car has a 700-mile range on the highway, 700 miles. It's just insane, but that's absolutely what internal combustion should be focused on. But unfortunately, I think they just missed the mark on this. I think that the fuel tank's too small and it doesn't have enough range. So we'll be correcting that as soon as there's an aftermarket option available for an auxiliary or a larger sized fuel tank that can be fully integrated. One other con, and I think especially in the luxury vehicle space, is a little bit disappointing, but I also just think it's how kind of things are made nowadays, and maybe it's Toyota Lexus production more so, but this car, as well as another Toyota Tacoma that I used to own, brand new. I bought a Tacoma in 2017, brand new. It's a nice truck, stick shift off-road model. It was a nice truck. I still miss it, but it had hood flutter at speed, and so does the GX550. So I'll put in a video of that now, and you can see basically that at speed, when you're at a highway speed, basically the hood flutters under the wind. So you're not denting the hood or anything else, but I don't know if it lacks like the structural rigidity, and that's part of the crash protection, is that it just doesn't have certain bracing. I really don't know, that's all speculation. But regardless, at speed, the hood flutters. Of course, when you have a German car like my M6, which is built for speed, but even, a Mercedes SUV or whatever, BMW X5, you're not gonna get hood flutter. Those cars just seem to be absolutely melted and glued to the road, and you just don't get things like that. Do I think it's a production issue or a structural issue or anything else? No, I don't think it's an issue per se. Like, I don't think that it's unintentional. I think they're perfectly fine with having that, and it's just kind of from an appearance standpoint or the driver's standpoint, a little wonky looking. But is it a real problem, or is it something that I would try to fix? Probably not. I suppose if the aftermarket released some fix for the hood flutter and it was proven that like there wasn't any structural issue to fixing it or doing something to change it, sure, I would go ahead and change it. But just something to note on this car. So hopefully those of you in the market have found this video helpful and interesting, or if you're about to receive your GX550, you found it helpful and interesting. None of the cons that I mentioned would have changed my decision. These are just things that you ultimately learn, over the course of owning a vehicle, about, what you like and what you don't like. I've owned several vehicles at this point in my life now, being a car enthusiast for over 15 years. And ultimately I've not yet found the perfect car, so no surprise there. I don't think the perfect car exists, certainly for, the limitations of money, right? So ultimately, still very, very happy with the decision. The fuel tank I will be changing when the opportunity arises. Otherwise, all the other stuff I can definitely live with, and continue to be very happy with the way this car performs. So as always, thanks again for watching. Would really appreciate likes and subscriptions. Those really help the channel. Helps us get the videos noticed and just encourages me to keep making this stuff. I like all the comments though, even the constructive ones. I appreciate it. So thanks for engaging with me, and see you next time.